Hi, Scary Recaps here. Today, I'm going to explain the movie Bound to Vengeance from 2015. Beware of spoilers. The film begins with a man filming his girlfriend at the park. Although shy at first, the 21-year-old woman introduces herself as Eve. Later on, a man is seen in a blue van driving to a remote area. He walks into a cabin and prepares a meal for the woman he is holding captive. The man apologizes to the victim for being late and tries to wake her up. As he is talking, the woman, who is pretending to be asleep, reaches out under the mattress and grabs a brick. She attacks the man and knocks him out. Soon, the captive, who is in fact Eve from the park, manages to unshackle her leg and chains the man in her place. The abductor, whose name is Phil, calls out to her, but Eve runs away. Eve walks out of the cabin and goes to the van. She doesn't have the car keys and feels trapped in that strange place. A video is playing, showing Eve at an amusement park together with the unknown man with the camera. Back in the cabin, Eve tries to call the police, but the phone line is dead. Armed with a kitchen knife, Eve searches the interior of the cabin for the car keys. Instead, she discovers a file that contains pictures of her boyfriend, Ronnie. Yet, that is not all. Soon, Eve finds photographs of other women with their names and numbers next to them. In a bedroom, Eve recovers her clothes and finds a gun. Pointing the gun at the door, Eve takes a quick bath before walking into the basement to confront her abductor. She tosses the photos of the other women on the ground and asks Phil what has happened to them and where they are. Phil refuses to say anything, and Eve threatens that she will kill him. The abductor says that if she kills him, that she will never know where the other girls are, and thus she will kill them too. Eve lowers the gun and considers his words. She shoots twice to intimidate him and make him see that she's being serious. Phil isn't persuaded though, but eventually gives her his car keys. Eve makes up a leash and forces her abductor to wear it around his neck. Holding him captive, Eve makes Phil walk to the van. Once they're both inside, Phil asks her which girl she wants to save first. Eve orders him to take her to the one that is closest to them. In a flashback video, Ronnie and Eve play at the amusement park. Back in the present, Phil drives the van with Eve standing behind him, holding the leash. They stop at the place where Nina is being held. They enter the abandoned house, and Eve goes to free Nina. Phil, however, tells her not to do it since Nina is broken. When Eve unshackles her, Nina runs away and Eve follows her. Nina storms out of the house, but in her panic she trips and falls hard on a metal fence, which pierces her neck and kills her. Eve is shocked by this and cries. Yet, she finds the strength to return back inside and drag Phil out. Eve tells him to go to the next closest girl, who Phil says that her name is Laura. After a long drive, in which Phil tries to justify his actions by saying that no one would care for Nina, they reach the second location. Phil leads Eve to Laura, who is tied up. Phil sets her free by telling her that Eve is going to take her place, and Laura, who seems to be in love with Phil, snaps at this comment and attacks Eve. Laura tries to choke and kill Eve. Eve, left with no choice, is forced to shoot and kill Laura. The abductor, having gotten the snare off of his neck, moves towards Eve, who shoots him in the leg and starts beating him with a piece of wood. In another flashback, it is revealed that Eve was being held captive with another girl. Inside the van, Eve ties Phil with duct tape. Phil tells her that she is special and confides in her that he didn't want for any of this to happen. Eve points the gun at him as he acknowledges that he is not a great man. He also says that he takes care of the girls and that he never harmed any of them. In his confession, Phil says that he is merely the zookeeper and not the hunter. Eve listens, glowering at him, until Phil mentions the name of her boyfriend, saying that Ronnie went out to search for Eve and instead found some horrible things. Phil promises to show Eve what Ronnie found after the next house where another girl, Lee, is being held. Eve now drives the van with Phil in the back. She stops at a dilapidated house and enters alone. After searching each room, Eve finds Lee in a dark room in the upper floor and sets her free. Lee tells her that they are coming back soon. Eve is confused until she hears a noise coming from the ground floor. Two men enter the room and Eve points the gun at them. Eve shoots one of the men in the neck. The second man tries to escape, but Eve wounds him and finishes him off with a bullet to the head. Lee is released and takes it out on the badly injured man on the floor. Eve changes clothes and leaves the house with Lee following her. As the two girls enter the van, Eve can't get the car to start. She gets angry and soon afterwards is filled with remorse for the deaths of Nina and Laura. She takes a moment and shows Lee a picture of Katrina, asking her if she knows her. Eve then shows Lee the abductor and tells her that she has to find Katrina. Lee agrees to join her on her quest. While Lee is driving, Phil informs Eve of the other girls nearby, ones that Ronnie has found before. As Eve and Lee drive to the next location, they arrive at a warehouse. They both enter and start searching for the girls. Meanwhile, Phil retrieves a mobile phone that was hidden in the van. At the same time, Eve and Lee find 6 more girls in a storage area. One of them says that some men brought them there for other men to buy them as slaves. The girl mentions something about a tall man who ran off, and Eve leaves, but not before telling Lee to call the police and wait there with the other girls. Eve returns to the van and finds it open. She thinks Phil has escaped, but he is still inside. Eve points the gun at him, who distracts her long enough for one of his accomplices to come and hit Eve from behind. As Eve struggles to break free from the man's grasp, Phil grabs her and knocks her out. Soon, Eve regains consciousness and finds herself held tight by Phil while the tall man points a gun at her. Phil tells his accomplice to shoot her in the leg, but then Lee comes and hits the man in the head with an iron rod, killing him. With the tables turned once again, Eve learns from Phil where Katrina is. As Lee stays behind to wait for the police, Eve leaves for the last house. On her way there, Eve listens to a voice message addressed to Phil and learns that he has a wife and child. Eve wonders what makes a man like Phil do what he does. Phil mentions Ronnie once again and accuses Eve of the deaths of some of the girls. At the last house, Eve is surprised to find Ronnie sleeping on an armchair. She points the gun at him, even though he looks relieved to have finally found her. Eve, however, is not convinced by his seemingly innocent face. Nervously enough, she asks him what he is doing in that house, and why Phil keeps mentioning his name. Ronnie says that he has been looking for her for 6 months, and manages to calm her down until a muffled cry is heard. Eve notices pictures of the captive girls, and asks Ronnie about them. Ronnie says that while looking for her, he tried to rescue those girls as well. Eve is dubious about his intentions, and forces him to open the door from where the cry has been heard. Ronnie complies and reveals a captive Katrina inside. Eve is devastated to find out that Ronnie was part of all of this, and shoots him multiple times. In the meantime, Phil, who is broken free, rushes to the driver's seat and tries unsuccessfully to start the engine and get away. Eve exits the house and, shooting the van in rage, holds him there. Back in the warehouse, the police arrive and save the girls along with Lee. Eve goes to kill Phil, but she is out of ammo. Phil taunts her, saying that Ronnie got most of her bullets. But this laugh is cut short when Eve tells him that before killing Ronnie, she extracted one last address. She shows it to him, and Phil begs her not to take him there, but Eve drives the car to the final house anyway. Phil says that she doesn't have to do this, that there are many other girls out there that can still be saved. Eve is thinking this over and decides to leave Phil, all bloody and broken, at the front door of his own house. Phil's wife is panicked by the sight of her husband and tries to help him. Eve is walking down the street and recollects her time during captivity. It is shown that the girl that she was in confinement with died at some point, and that girl was her sister. At that shocking revelation, Eve stops walking and promptly returns to Phil's house. Just as Phil's little daughter pushes the front door closed, Eve's bloody hand rests on it, keeping it open. In a post-credits scene, Ronnie films Eve and her younger sister, Dylan, all hanging out at the park.